ride repository. So let's create one here. We have one already, and this is a singleton class. This means that this class is going to be initialized only once, be called only once, and we can use it in its lifetime. So we could use the get it package, but I don't want to bother you guys with a lot of packages, so we can just use this singleton class to do the same thing. So these are the things we are going to have: load ride, see all rides, cancel ride, and body ride. So we are going to have a value listenable builder, or value notifier, sorry, of type list of ride. I'm going to import that, call it, I'm going to call this rides, and I'm going to, this could be null. No, this could, no, it shouldn't be null. So I'm going to set this as a type of list of rides, and this initially is going to be empty. So let's load a ride. So the first is going to be load ride. It's going to be a future function, and we are going to return whatever ride that is being loaded, and we call it load ride, and we are going to pass in the ride ID. So this is going to be an async, and we are going to check here. We're going to do a try and cache here. First, this could be null. Let's just get that. Let's see if the ID that is being passed here is empty. Let's check that. We're going to first, let's just say not empty. So I want this to be readable, very readable, else let's return null. So if this is not empty, and let's do a try and cache here. So we are going to do a try and cache, and we are going to go into our ride here. We are going to go into our rides here and check if this ride contain an ID we are passing here. So how do we do that? We can use the first way on the list, so calling rides, and we can just make this called rides notifier, and have a getter that is actually a list of rides, and this will get rides, and we can actually get the rides notifier and values. So we can get rides and first way. So this could not be true. This test could fail, so that's why I'm putting it in a try and cache. If this test fails, it goes to the next block of code, which is the cache block of code, and run that. So we are going to check, and this is going to be ride, called ride, and the type is going to be a ride, and we are going to check ride ID is equals to ID. So if this is true, if that is true, we're going to call this ride, if it is true, we are going to return this right. So we are going to return that right, and else if it is not true, let's go and get it from the database. So we'll have a final here. So we're going to have a final Firebase Firestore collection, Firestore right collection. There's going to be Firestore Firebase store instance collection, and it's going to be right. So we're going to get that and use it. So we're going to have a new try and cache here as well, and this is going to be documents. We're going to pass in the ID from here, and we are going to get this. We're going to get this and then store it as a snapshot. So getting that, we can actually, we're going to await for this. So it's a feature that will return a document snapshot of map, string, and dynamic. So let's get that. So we will get this as final ride. You can get ride from map, and the snapshot here, or we should call this a document, and we can get the data and pass it in here. So this could be null, so I'm passing an empty map, and we are going to return that. So if this doesn't run, and we are going to return null. I'm going to return null, and we can print something. This would cache on Firebase exception, and we can just print something, and this would be, let's print whatever the message is. So that's our load ride, and we are going to test that to see it in action. And yep, so it's very rare this could be empty. We can check that from the state. So let's just get rid of this. So it's very rare. Let's make our code cleaner, and let's go to the next. We have gotten load ride, and let's say see all rides. So we are going to go into, so load all rides. So that's what that means. It's going to be a list of ride, and it's going to be load rides, load all rides, and this is going to get so this is going to get the owner going to get the owner UID, going to load the owner UID and load all user ride, let's call it that way, so we will not mistake driver rides to a user ride. And this is going to be the owner UID, and let's get this. So we are going to have this in a try and catch, and this exception is going to be on a Firebase exception. Yep, so I don't think we're going to use that. And if it is this will return, if we got an exception, it will return what we have as right. And we're going to print something to our console, something occurred. You can print that, and yes, let's just leave it there. And what else? We can have can get the right collections here, and we get it from where, and using the where here actually is a way to filter on Firebase. So on Firebase, so using the where here, we are going to go in and check the owner UID. So there could be a lot of rights here, so we are going to filter the ones that matches our user UID here, which is the owner UID. So I'm going to have the where function here, and we are going to have owner UID, and we're going to have equals is equals to the owner UID, and we're going to set this to a snapshot and final snapshots. So this is going to be a stream, so whatever updates we get, we always have them. I'll just try to make this bigger so you can see it. I hope you can see it. And the next we are going to have is snapshots listen. So we are going to listen to this snapshot, and the event coming out here is going to be a query snapshot here. So we can use this, call this query, call that query, and I'm going to have add to write. So I'm going to have the query here, and I'm going to create this private method, and this adds whatever query we get to the list item here, which is the write notifier. So it's going to add it there. So the next we are going to have on our add to writes here, we are going to have features wait. So this is going to wait for whatever features that we have multiple features to complete and collect their results. So we are going to wait for that, and we are going to call in the query here, and the query and we are going to get the documents, and we are going to map this, and this is going to be an asynchronous map, and the data here is going to be doc here. So it's going to be query snapshot documents, and we can have our ride, and ride from map, and we can use the doc here and get the data. Okay, let's say we want to check if the ride we are actually notifying here already exists. So in this, we are going to look for a way to check and actually remove that as well. So let's see, we're going to do we're going to do ride, rides, and we're going to do index where to actually get the index, so we can actually remove if it is already there and insert a new one, a new updated one. We're going to call it an index, and we are going to check in the ride. So we are going to call the one here ride X and the one here ride. So we are going to check ride X if ride X has the ride ID here. So if it's as is going to return a integer 0, so else is going to return an integer -1. So we are going to check this index. If it is not -1, if it is on -1, we can update that. So we can do we can go into ride notifier, and the value, and remove at and remove the index and insert a new one, so it looks more like an update we did. Into value and insert a new one. So we are going to insert the new, here is the index, and also insert a new ride, so it's going to be more an updated one. So we are going to call ride notifier listeners, and the next is else. So if this does not have this in our storage here, which is the rides notifier here, we can just add this. So we can just do values dot add and add whatever ride that is here, and so we can just bring this ride notifier listeners down below here. So that is it for this to run, and we can just return our empty rides here. Okay, it could not be empty, so if this data is being gotten from the internet, is going to add them to our ride notifiers here. So the next is cancel ride. So let's do the cancel ride. So I'm going to remove that, and this is going to be a feature, and as well we'll return the cancelled ride. And we're going to return the cancel ride, and they're going to call this cancel ride, and we are going to pass in the ride ID. And what next? We are going to have a try and cache to check, and this try and cache is going to be based on Firebase exception, and this could be null. Yeah, this could be null. I'm going to return null here, and the next is going to, so let's await and call in load ride and pass the ID, and this is going to be ride. So this is going to be ride. Cool. And the next we are going to do is going into the Firebase store collection and going to the Fire store collection and getting the ID and updating. We're going to update a specific data, and that data is going to be the status here. So what do we have on our right? Let's go in and see our status. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the cancel here, it's the 5th in our index. Here we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, our 5th index. And if we set this to the status of this to 5, this is going to be cancelled. This write is going to be cancelled. So let's save that and go back to our write repository and have our status. So the update method here takes in a map of string and object, which the object could be anything, and let's type in that, and the value is going to be status, and this key is going to be status and the value is going to be 5. So that's what I mean, and we are going to await for this. And I think this should be called first. Yes, this should be called first. Yeah, and we are going to return the write here. So simple explanation to this: we go to the write collection and the document, the ID, we pass in the ID here and update the status number 5. We update the status key to 5. So that's it, and we can board a write here. So let's go in. This would be our last function for this, our last function for the write repository, and we are going to board write. So it's going to return write, and I'm going to call it board write. So it's going to be collect, is going to get a write. So we are going to pass in write from the state class, and we get that here. So we're going to call in Firebase exception on, we're going to call try and catch on Firebase exception, sorry, and we are going to have let's see, okay, let's see, okay, so we can just print could not board write, and we are going to return null here. This could be null, and yeah, and let's see, let's go into the write repository and let's now board a write. So to actually board a write, you are going to go into the await, going to go into, this is going to be, yeah, in the sequence method, and we are going to await for the Firebase, and we're going to pass in a write ID here. So we are going to generate that in our states, and the next we are going to do is the next we are going to do is set. So we are creating this, so we are going to give in some data here. Right option, and that could be right option. So can update that now, and we can have right option. We can also have status. Okay, we can bring this down. So start address, we can just have this. Cool. And start address, we have the country, we have the latitude and longitude, which is going to be a map as well, where we have the lat, and we have the lat, and also which we have the lat and long, and having the latitude and also having the long, and having the longitude. And we can have the postcode and also the state. So that is that. We can just duplicate this to have our end address, and we can change this to end address. So I think that is all. I think we don't need the status. So this is going to set this, and we are going to, after that is being set, and we check, we do a try and cache here to make sure. Okay, we already have that, so we have a right here, so we want to return a right, so you can just do await load right, and we pass in the right Okay, why is that? Okay, yeah, it's from here. Added right, so I'm going to pass in the right and the ID here. So it's going to go in here and check if it exists, get it. If it doesn't, get it from the internet, and it's going to get it. Sorry, I've not added one of the vital function here, which is value dot add. So it's going to add the right here to our list here. Yeah, so it's going to return this right. So that is that for our board right. Talking about adding it here, we are going to call a write notifier as well. So I'm going to show you how this would work on sending a real data to our write repository here. Okay, so on our map state here, we are going to have the confirm write button, and you can see it here on confirm write. So here in the confirm write is where we are going to push this to our database. So first you're going to get our user repository, so we can get our user ID from there. So user repo, and I'll get that using the user repository instance. I'm going to fetch this, import it, and get the instance of it. So in our confirm write, where's it? Yeah, here. So in our confirm write, we can also have the, let's say, the owner ID, owner UID to be current user, and we have got the ID. So this could be null, and we are going to check if this ID is not null. If this ID is not null and the ID is not as well empty, that's when this function is going to run, and we are going to call in the write repo also, write repository, and we're going to give it write repository dot instance. Yeah, so we now going to call in our board write, and we are going to pass in the write here. So let's create a private constructor, a private method initialize write, and it's going to be initialize write, and I'm going to return a write. I'm going to import that. Yeah, so, and we are going to have a final code write. Okay, so I'm going to return this write, and so we are going to have a final here as well, and call it write, call in initialize write, and I'm going to pass it in here. Also, this is going to be an async. I'm going to wait for this effect. So I'm going to pass in created at here, and this is going to be date time dot now, and the next is going to be the driver ID. It's going to be null be empty, and we are going to pass the end address here, and we're going to make sure this is not null, and we're going to pass the ID here. So we are going to generate an ID. So we're going to say ID here, and we're going to go to code generator class. So here's the class, it generates random ID. So we are going to generate and call the instance, and we generate code. So the prefix for this is going to be city and ID. So it's going to generate random ID, and let's see. Let's make sure this is not null. And also we are going to go into the user repo that we have here and fetch the owner ID. So we can just have it here, UID, and we can also pass it in here. Can pass it in there, and the rate is going to be just an empty rate with those and stars is going to be 0. The right option has been okay, so it's going to be selected right option, and we are going to have a start address and the status of it, and I'm going to have right status initial. I think that's all. So that is all. So I'm going to rerun this. Okay, we have added all of this to initialize our ride here, and when clicking on the confirm button from our UI, we are going to send this board ride to our database, and you're going to see it on the right here. So I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to click on the office to go to my office, and clicking on that, I'm going to request ride, and I'm going to go for the VIP, and I'm going to confirm here. And as soon as this confirm button is clicked, we have pushed a data to our database, and here is the ID we have auto generated, and you see the created ads, you see the end address, and you also see the passengers that are available, which is the owner ID. You can also see the rates, you can also see the ride option, you can see the start address, and everything, it's working fine. So on our next video, we are going to talk more about displaying the driver that's going to take on this ride, and we are going to set up the driver accounts, we are going to load ride, we are going to see all our rides, and that is it. So thank you for watching this video. If you're not a subscriber to this channel, please subscribe to this YouTube channel for more exciting episodes of CityCab and a taxi app like this. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.